Hi, I'm Geordie Rose, and this is the Sanctuary Ground Truth Podcast. Today, I sit down with Olivia Norton, who runs product and technology for Sanctuary, and we talk about the work that she's done in AI and robotics, tracing back more than a decade through two companies. It's a very fascinating look into the leadership here at Sanctuary and how we treat the embodied AI problem. Hope you like it. Good morning, Olivia.
Good morning.
How are you feeling?
Pretty good. It's raining here, which means cool and usual.
Yeah. This is the rebooted Ground Truth Podcast, and we're trying something different here, where I'm going to be interviewing different people from the company and learning a little bit about what everybody does and how they think about the problem and all of that. So you're first. Do you want to just introduce yourself briefly? Who are you and what do you do here?
Sure. My name is Olivia Norton. I'm one of the co-founders here at Sanctuary. I've been working with this team for just shy of 10 years now, over two companies, both focused on embodied intelligence. And I am responsible for product and engineering here at Sanctuary. Day to day, that looks like everything from robot wrangling to customer facing to, you name it.
So we've known each other for quite a while. You said like almost 10 years. Do you remember how we first connected?
Yes. I did a master's in engineering at the University of British Columbia in 2014. And you were a regular fixture at a tech entrepreneurship course that is a kind of a staple of the MBA and the master's courses at UBC. So on a regular cadence, you would return to UBC to provide a high bar to the students that were coming out of those classes around ways in which their sort of entrepreneurial journey could meaningfully impact the world. And so this meant no dog walking apps, no bill splitting apps, more cosmic and human
Meaningful
focuses for that group.
Yeah. And so there was something that you found interesting about all that?
Well, returning to the day, when you came into that course, what you said was, "I've got two things that I can talk to you guys about." And this is a bunch of engineers and MBA students, excited to make a mark on the world and not yet clear on the direction or the how. And you said, we can talk about quantum computing, which is something that you'd had years of experience in and doing, or we can talk about this new thing that I'm doing. It's robots, it's AI, and it's very cool. Not that you had a bias in either direction, but that the class chose to hear about.
What year was this?
Your embodied intelligence project. This was 2014.
Okay, so that was an important year.
Yeah.
And how did that resolve itself? I seem to remember there was a quantum computer involved somehow, but I don't actually. No, I asked the class, right?
Yeah.
And people wanted to hear about robots.
It was almost unanimous in the desire to hear about robots, which maybe speaks to the current zeitgeist.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it is kind of neat that people would choose the AI and robots over quantum computing. Yeah, so 2014 was the year we founded Kindred, which for me was a very important transition in my career from the quantum computing thing to the AI thing. So I guess we probably met you really close to the beginning of that.
Correct.
Because I can't remember exactly what the date was that Kindred was founded. Do you remember when during the year?
It was earlier in the year, and this was later in the year. Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So this would have been what, November or something?
Yep. Yeah, and I think that you'd just moved into a new space here in Mount Pleasant.
Yeah. Oh, that brings me back. So what did you do when you first started when you joined the crew?
At Kindred.
What was your first thing that we
The
did?
pitch, the pitch. So you guys were hiring when you came into that class, and you were specifically hiring for a role that sat at the intersection between the engineers and scientists and researchers and the lawyers in the sense
Oh,
of
right.
IP protection.
Yeah.
So there was a very specific sort of IP translator role that you were looking for, which is something that I hadn't had experience with in the past, was eager to understand better, and was very happy to hold on to in service of participating in a journey that was happening on my doorstep, which was sort of a surprising and serendipitous outcome, which was just one of the experiences that I was having as I was listening to the thing that you guys had brought life to here
Yeah.
in Vancouver.
Yeah, that role, the person internally that helps with the patenting process by understanding what everybody does. I've found that that's always been a really critical role in every company I've been involved in, and I don't know why more people don't do it. Can you kind of describe what a day would have been like when you were doing that role? Do you even remember? It was a long time ago.
I worked to insert myself into all the activities that were going on the technology side from in a sort of a voyeuristic way. Where are our problem spaces? How are we thinking about approaching those problems? And are there opportunities in those problem spaces to design a protective sort of boundary around that? In practice, there was also a significant amount of drafting.
Of patent claims and patents?
Yeah, or sort of disclosures, the preparatory work, all of the information that the lawyers would require to assemble that final asset, diagrams and write-ups and flow charts and this kind of thing. The fundamental building blocks. So extracting that from the engineers, either actively or passively, ideally passively, because the desire to minimally impact the work that those teams were doing was of high priority. Yeah.
So that portfolio that you worked on ended up becoming an important part of the acquisition of the company much later on. So the company was acquired in 2019. I think it was 2019. Yeah, it was 2019. And at least part of the negotiation around value had to do with the IP portfolio. And a lot of the earlier stuff that we filed was actually more relevant. So I don't know for sure, but you probably worked on most of the stuff that the people were actually taking a look at when the company was acquired, 5 years later. So that's pretty cool. So after you've kind of worked through the working with the scientists and engineers and being kind of a bridge between them and the legal side, the patent side, what did you do next?
That nexus between the engineers and scientists and the lawyers was very, very interesting. Ultimately, not where I wanted to stay. So what we did was I went out and found an appropriate candidate to step into that role so I could extract myself and move in the direction of the technology teams, which is ultimately what I did. So the living out of my desire to better understand the way that our minds work and the implications and applications to different form factors embodied in the real world. And that was what I was really excited about.
So was it, so this was sort of maybe an underlying why or reason that you wanted to do this in the first place? Is that there was like a personal motivation to understand how minds worked or, that kind of whole area?
Correct.
So you've been doing this for a long time now. Do you still have that?
I do. It's more nuanced. I do. And I think I'm a little bit more pragmatic about it in the sense of appreciating that the North Star is several phases away and being a little bit more clinical about what the imminent phases should be or need to be in order to continue on that trajectory while producing a flywheel of value and excitement and interest.
Yeah. So the role at Kindred that was for the first kind of technical role, like what was that like? Like what would you work on again during, an average day?
We were focused on the development of cognitive architectures for this sort of multi-embodiment fleet that we worked with at Kindred. So these were robots ranging in size and shape from very, very small to human-sized, person-sized. And we were looking to understand and implement the fundamental sort of modules or components that were required to allow that system to behave in the world in a way that you would expect. And that is a blanket term that allows me to apply all of human common sense and our evolutionary history into one little bucket.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So how did that go? Like, did you feel like that phase of your life was productive, or do you think it was a lot of kind of pushing boulders up hills and having them roll down? Like, how did you feel about that whole phase of things, which probably, I don't know, lasted like maybe 2 or 3 years, I guess?
So a few comments. The first is this work really put me in a camp in regards to Descartes' sort of mind-body separation.
Okay.
In the sense that defining boundaries that allow for the arbitrary application of a control system across different embodiments becomes very interesting and complex, and speaks to the entwined nature of our intelligence and our physicality. And it's the same to be said for all things like that in the world. So that was one of the big sort of takeaways and learnings from me from that time. In terms of boulders, that is a characterization that I generally shy away from because it isn't useful. So if I'm not learning, then we have to be doing something else. And if I am learning, then it's sort of distinctly outside the category of a boulder rolling down the hill. So, yeah.
Yeah, I like that. The first thing you said about the embodiment specific thing. So what conclusions did you draw? Like that because a lot of people now are trying to build control systems for arbitrary robots.
Yes.
Which was something that we've obviously thought about a lot and abandoned 2 or 3 times along the way because it didn't seem to work very well. Do you have any thoughts or conclusions about whether it's a good idea to try to build a software system that controls many different kinds of robots, or is that just not going to work?
There were constraints to the state of the technology at that time that are very different from what we have available to us today. And this is actually one of the sparks for me at the moment in regards to the significant changes in absolute terms and in sort of velocity and acceleration that we're seeing in this space at the moment, opening up some of those doors that weren't closed previously, but had challenges to them that made it difficult to make an argument for addressing them at that time in a fulsome way. Yeah.
Yeah. So you think that the stuff that is being built now, you could actually build, minds for robots that could inhabit different robots?
For you've read Diaspora.
Yeah.
There's a portion of that book, and I hope that I'm getting this right, so forgive me if I've got some of the details wrong, but the premise is that the characters in that novel are largely untethered by physical reality, the ones that are the focus point of the story. They no longer have a physical body. But the universe is inhabited by a whole slew of characters that span this sort of gamut between physical tether and sort of ethereal, untethered. And so one of the discussions that is had in that book is this idea of sort of that qualia piece, the experience that those agents have of their world, whatever that means, that their experience is so fundamentally different that they have a difficulty communicating. And they need to use waypoints in sort of this pseudo-evolutionary chain in order to effectively pass information. It's a big old transformer that they're kind of passing things through. In regards to your question around the creation of control systems that allow for the arbitrary control of different types of embodiments, I think of it in a similar way, in the sense that the technologies that we have now are allowing us to bridge across 2 or 3 or 4 maybe layers in a broader evolutionary chain. And we're going to have to continue to work towards sort of a complete ambivalent control system. We're not there yet.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That story that you're talking about, the diaspora by Greg Egan, is definitely recommended reading for people. I think that's it's got a whole bunch of interesting ideas, and I really like that one. I think it's going to become more clear that that's actually a thing as AI gets more is that intelligence isn't one thing. It's a lifestyle for a body is sometimes the way I like to think about it. And every kind of body has a different lifestyle, like octopuses and rats and trees. I mean, they all do things, but they're the way that they are in the world is obviously very different. So in 2018 we left and founded Sanctuary. What was that like for you professionally, personally, because that was a big transition, I suppose, for everybody who made the jump. What was it like for you?
It was very exciting. It was an opportunity to take the learnings from the previous years and apply them to a blank canvas. And the ability to put in place some constraints in the way that we thought about solving sort of the problems that we laid out for ourselves, to keep us on this trajectory that we had started at Kindred to this fulsome, intelligent, embodied system.
So what would be examples of those types of constraints? Like what was different between Kindred and Sanctuary?
Kindred did a great job of evaluating the possible application areas for general purpose robots. Ultimately landed on a very economically relevant opportunity in e-commerce distribution. And that opportunity came with a set of specific requirements that, if satisfied, would move the sort of the resulting throughput and performance from what could be characterized as maybe human-like, bound to a human-like form factor, to something very specific, targeted, and sort of superhuman in that very focused context. And the intelligence of a system like that, to our earlier discussion, is, I don't want to use the term limited, but it's constrained to the physicality that you've provided to it. So in this case, the bins that we were filling for this e-commerce task were surrounding an arm, so your physical embodiment, and that arm was responsible for picking items in its world, its constrained access workspace, and placing them in the correct location. So this is an interesting problem. It's a hard problem, and it's an economically valuable problem, and it's a a solution that ultimately wasn't applicable to other problems. It was a single problem solution. So very interesting, but not the broader sort of vision of this generally intelligent embodiment.
Just as an aside, do you think of like the kindred sort machine as being a little bit like an animal? Because I personally have this view that, these different kinds of intelligences for machines. And what I mean by that is like software systems that convert perception into action. So the machine perceives the world and then it does something based on that. I kind of think of them a little bit like different species. And the kindred thing is maybe like, I don't know what the right analogy would be, but some kind of like primitive animal that has this very niche existence and all it does is this one thing, but that's fine. It's happy doing it because that's all it really knows or cares about. You think about machines and the software control systems as being like species.
In that evolutionary chain sort of example, yes, exactly right. So it's a node along this line with a particular set of both physical capability and cognitive capability boundaries that are those two things are bound together in the sense of your embodiment sort of driving the cognition that you would need.
So what was different? What's different at Sanctuary, like back in the early days? So we built this kind of a machine that was really cool and did what it did really well. Had some really interesting new ideas in it, like reinforcement learning and teleoperation and a bunch of other things. Why wasn't that enough for you?
The desire to find a general purpose platform that allows for the continued evolution of that underlying cognition was an important driver here.
So the physical robot expanding its generality.
That boundary needs to be expanded such that the problem space over which your cognitive control system is going to evolve is large enough for that to be an interesting and like a long-lived problem and activity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the part of this new thing was to move away from like an evolutionary niche of something that did its job really well but was limited and couldn't kind of was more like an evolutionary dead end even to something that was more like the great grandparents of something that could be completely different, like what we're working on now. Is that right? Yeah. How when you made the transition to being a founder of a new startup, how concerned were you about the risks of doing that? So like I'd done it a couple times before, but this was the first time that you actually were a founder of a new thing. Like were you scared or concerned or worried about the future or any of those things, or was it more just excitement and let's go do this thing?
In the balance of do it versus don't do it, I knew that, and I should say that I was lucky to be in a position to make this type of decision because that's not always true. But I felt like I would be remiss and regretful to not take this problem on, regardless of the outcome. And so I went into it with great excitement and no held sort of immediate concerns about, whether it was going to be a great success or something that we file away as a 2 or 3 year experiment and then move on to the next thing.
Yeah. Because back then, like things are different now. But back in 2018, the idea of building like a humanoid robot with a general intelligence in it was so outside of what people were thinking that we got zero traction talking about this idea with anybody. Like the amount of like blank stares and like getting up and walking out of rooms that we encountered in that early phase was pretty remarkable. So, I mean, personally, I thought we might be way too early back in 2018. Like, I knew that was a cool problem and I wanted to work on it, but I got the sense that nothing much might happen in the whole AI world for a long time. And maybe we wouldn't be able to build robots that were good enough. You know, you could build little toys and stuff, but could you actually? But man, how things have changed. Like what? Okay, so let's fast forward to modern day. So you're running product and technology now for a company that has roughly 150 people. Most of them report to you some way or another. It's gone from being a bunch of dreams to a systematic attack on one of the most important problems that humanity will ever try to solve, which is building general intelligence. So you're right at the tip of the spear of all of this. So what is your day like now? Like, what's a typical day like in your life?
It depends on the day, so I'll just blend them all together and give you an average. I try to keep close to the activity around the R&D and technology development, and that looks like staying in tune with the teams, walking around the building in the lab, asking what people are up to and what their highlights have been for the day, for the week, and what problems they're having that they may or may not know how to approach, and with the sort of open offer to try to help to solve those problems. There is a significant amount of communication with external parties, be it customers or partners, looking to work together to understand the ways in which this technology is going to change those other businesses. So, this is foundational tech. This is going to sort of rise all boats, and the first adopters in this space are going to be dipping their toe into this sort of ocean of potential productivity and value that we work through with customers on a regular basis. There are parts of the technology stack that are well suited to partnership with other groups who have invested in long-term initiatives related to those particular areas, and working with those groups to understand how to accelerate this whole activity in a way to achieve these outcomes sooner. So the pie and the potential here is very large, and it will go to those who collaborate in an effective way to bring this to kind of the real world. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Not everybody views it that way. Like, I think some of the groups who are working on this think that they can do it, kind of by themselves, but I'm with you. I don't think this type of problem is not the kind of problem. There's some like a quote, I can't remember who said it. I think it might have been, I'm going to get this wrong. I was thinking it's Steve Wozniak or somebody, or Steve Jobs, somebody said that no matter how good your team is, there are more smart people working for your competitors, or something to that effect. And it's true. There's always smart people more out there than in here, because every company is small compared to the world. So I think that really, really hard problems need to have collaboration to accelerate them. Eventually I think all these things will be solved if it's possible to do it. But I think what you do have agency over as an entrepreneur is how long it takes. Like, you can do things that make things happen faster. So I think like part of the real challenge with your position is knowing what to do in what order in order to make things happen faster is very, very hard. Like how do you think about the interplay of like longer term thinking with the need to actually deliver? Like how do you square those two things for in your position?
The scope of the desired capability boundary of these systems in the farther future is very large. And my perspective on getting to that future is that, in the same with any sort of adoption curve, you will have a cadence of features released that will open up that market to other interesting and applicable use cases. But that you start with something concrete. And we are seeing incredible interest and uptake from sort of a strategic investment in automotive of this type of technology to help them be more effective in their operations. And that to me is a beachhead with a set of skills and capabilities required that have significant impacts on other industries that are not automotive. So you'll start to see the proliferation of those first skills out through industries, and then as the skills and capabilities grow, the adoption within those industries will grow, and the applicability of those systems across a broader range of operations will grow. So it's going to be phased, and this needs to be kept in mind as you're thinking about roadmaps and as you're thinking about solving specific problems. Like, where is the overlap of that problem space with other areas of interest such that this adoption curve is sensible and sort of aligns with the way that the technology is progressing.
What do you like best about your job right now? Like what about the things that you're doing is like if you think this is really cool. This is like what I like doing. This is the thing that really like kind of lights my fire. Like what is it?
Generally, if we're in an interview or something like that, and somebody asks me what my favorite part of my job is,
Yeah.
my de facto answer is related to my personal characteristic or sort of personality flaw around the perpetual collection of information. So I am curious and I like to know, and cross-functional, an amazing cross-functional team that have all these great skill sets and experiences coming together on a project like this is kind of a candy shop for this perpetual curiosity. So cross-functional collaboration is a really important nexus for me.
I have to say that it's not exactly the same thing, but one of the things that I love most about this is how interesting and weird any particular day can be because of how much progress happens so quickly in so many different areas. You know, like it's unlike anything I've ever worked on before, where you can come into the office and see something that is like makes your jaw drop that you didn't even know was a thing, and now it's like actually. So just anecdotally, one of the things that happened, I think it was last week or the week before, is our team was deploying walking algorithms on a robot that we'd acquired from another company. And a bunch of people got together in a room, and the team that was building those algorithms sort of demonstrated this robot walking around and doing stuff. And I just could not believe what I was looking at. Like, I've been working in AI and robotics as long as you have, 10 plus years. I have never seen anything like that in person, and it was just like right there, right in front of us. And I was like, it was literally jaw dropping. I could not believe what I was looking at. Because you remember at the Thormange walking thing back in Kindred, So this would have been what, 2016 or 2017 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd bought a bipedal walking robot from a company called Robotis. We still have him somewhere. I think he's in storage or whatever, or at least parts of him. And it required a team of people, if I'm remembering correctly, from Korea to come and get him walking around the office. And when he was walking around the office, it was very kind of mechanical and static walking thing. And it was really impressive, I suppose, for the time. But comparing those two things, like what we saw 2 weeks ago with that, anybody who thinks that the whole idea of building AGI and robots is like science fiction future should come spend a couple weeks here and just see how quickly things change. It's remarkable. I think that's actually my favorite part of this too, is how many new interesting things just present themselves, and you get to be right at the kind of nexus point of all of that stuff.
It's easy to forget that others don't have that same experience.
Yeah.
So trying to describe sort of this visceral nature of pulling your robot friend into place here beside you at the workstation as being totally normal.
I actually would really love to have more of those guys. I know that we're not going to do it, but there's some like young boy part of me that just wants a bunch of those walking around the office for no particular reason other than it would be super cool.
Mm-hmm. I get it.
Yeah. I can hear the eye roll. Anything else you wanted to discuss about your role, or things that you're interested in looking at in the future, or anything like that?
I think we covered a lot of ground today. So I'll say that I'm excited for a forum like this for sanctuary folks and visitors to have this type of discussion, to try to provide in words the experience of working alongside these systems to sort of a broader audience that doesn't get a chance to come into the office for 2 weeks to check everything out.
Yeah. I'm actually, I think that it's going to be cool to introduce the folks who work here to the broader community. We've got a lot of really interesting, high-performing folks who've done things that are, I think, unique, and telling those stories is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Olivia.
Thank you.